On July 1st, 1916, the British Army fired 1.5 million shells at the German lines over 7 days to clear the way. Then the men climbed out anyway. 470 casualties in a single day. The wire was still there. You are 19 years old and you are from Accrington, Lancashire, which is a mill town that makes cotton and not much else. Before the army you had worked the same loom your father worked for 11 years, in the same building, on the same floor, 6 days a week from 5:30 in the morning. You enlisted in September 1914 with 36 other men from the same street. The recruiting sergeant said it would be over by Christmas. He said this the way men say things they have been told to say, without looking at the person they are saying it to. You have been in France for 9 months. You have been in this section of trench near the village of Serre for 6 weeks. The trench is 1 meters deep and wide enough for 2 men to pass if one of them turns sideways. The walls are revetted with timber and sandbags, and in the places where the timber has rotted the mud comes through in slow brown tongues. You have learned to sleep standing up against the wall because the floor floods when it rains and it rains 3 days out of 7. Tonight it is not raining. Tonight the artillery has been firing for 7 days without stopping and the noise has become the absence of noise. The thing your body stopped registering because registering it was taking too much from somewhere else. You can have a conversation at normal volume inside it. You can hear yourself think. The shells going over sound like trains and the shells landing sound like the ground deciding something. Your section commander, Lieutenant Neville, walks the line at 2200 hours and tells you the barrage has cut the German wire. He tells you the German dugouts will be destroyed. He tells you that tomorrow, the 1st of July, you will walk across no man's land, and the German trenches will be empty or nearly empty and you will occupy them by midday. He says this and you write it down in the part of your brain where you keep things you need to hold on to. You do not know that at this moment, 500 meters across no man's land, German soldiers are sitting in dugouts 12 meters underground, playing cards and waiting, listening to the British shells hitting the ground above them and doing the same arithmetic you are doing, which is counting the hours until it stops. You sit with your back against the trench wall and you clean your Lee Enfield rifle for the 3rd time today. Not because it needs it, because your hands need something to do that has a beginning and an end. The man next to you, Private Thomas Howarth, also from Accrington, also from your street, falls asleep sitting up. You can tell by the way his head drops, and then rights itself and drops again. You watch him sleep for a while. You think about the loom, the particular sound it makes, a rhythm you could feel in your sternum more than hear. You think about how your mother packed sandwiches in newspaper when you worked the morning shift, cheese and pickle, and you would eat them in the alley behind the mill at 10 o'clock with the other men. You think this and then you stop. Thinking about it because there is nowhere to put it. The artillery fires all night. You do not sleep. At 7:28 a.m. the British artillery lifts. 2 minutes before 0 hour, the guns that have been firing for 7 days go quiet. The silence is the loudest thing you have ever heard. You are standing at the base of the ladder with your Lee Enfield and 66 pounds of kit. The man above you is Thomas Howarth and the man below you is a boy from Burnley, whose name you have learned but will not retain. In your chest, there is something that is not fear exactly, or not only fear, but the particular feeling of being in a line that is moving and not being able to step out of it even if you wanted to. The whistle blows at 7:30. Thomas goes up first. You follow because he went. That is the whole of it, not courage, not duty, not the king. Thomas went and you followed, because you have been following Thomas Howarth since you were 7 years old and some habits do not stop for wars. You come up over the parapet into a morning that is clear and warm, a July morning in northern France that smells of chalk and cut grass underneath the other smells. For 1 second, 1 full second, no man's land is quiet. Then the German machine guns open up. The Maxim MG-08 fires 400 rounds per minute. The German crews had been waiting in their dugouts for the barrage to lift. They came up into their positions in the time it took the British officers to blow their whistles. They had ranged their guns on the British parapet weeks ago. They knew exactly where you would appear. You do not know any of this. You know the man to your left goes down. You know Thomas is 3 meters ahead of you and still moving. You walk because the order was to walk. The order was specifically to walk, not run, because the commanding officers believed the German resistance would be minimal and running would break formation. You walk at the regulation pace across ground that has been shelled for 7 days and is now a field of craters 10 meters across and 3 meters deep, each one filled with something you do not look at directly. You are 70 meters from the German wire when you see that the wire has not been cut. The shells went over it. The wire, which is 30 meters deep in places and strung on iron stakes driven into the chalk, is largely intact. There are gaps, men are funneling into the gaps. The machine guns are aimed at the gaps. You find a gap and you go through it, and on the other side there is a shell crater, and you get into it, and you stay in it. Because the ground between the crater and the German parapet is 40 meters of open chalk, and there is nothing on it that is not being fired at. Thomas is not with you. You do not know where Thomas is. You stay in the crater. The crater is 4 meters across and 2 meters deep, and smells of cordite and wet chalk and something else that you identify and then stop identifying. There are 2 other men in it when you arrive. A corporal from a different battalion whose name you never learned. A boy who cannot be more than 17, who has a wound in his left shoulder that he is holding with his right hand and watching with an expression of serious concentration, the way you would look at a machine that is not behaving correctly, and you are trying to understand why. You stay in the crater for 4 hours. In those 4 hours you learn the geography of no man's land, the way you learn the geography of the mill, by necessity, by repetition, by the cost of not knowing. You learn which directions the machine gun fire is coming from. You learn that the German artillery has begun dropping shells on no man's land to prevent exactly the thing you are trying to do, which is stay alive in a hole in the ground until something changes. Nothing changes. At some point in the late morning, the corporal says he is going to make a run for the German parapet. He says this the way men say things when they have decided and are telling you rather than asking you. He goes over the edge of the crater and you do not see what happens to him, you hear it. You stay. The boy with the shoulder wound stops talking around noon, not because he is dead, because there is nothing left to say that the situation is not already saying. You eat the biscuits from your kit. You drink the water from your canteen. You watch the rim of the crater and you count. You count to 60 and then count again. You do this because counting is something your body knows how to do and your body needs something it knows. Somewhere behind you, in the British lines, officers are writing in their logs that the attack is proceeding. They are writing this because the men who would tell them otherwise are in craters or on the wire, or somewhere the orderlies will find them later or not find them at all. You do not know what is being written. You know the chalk is white and the sky is blue, and both of these things are exactly as they were this morning before 7:30. And this seems like information that should mean something. It does not mean anything. You get back to the British trench at 21:30 hours, after dark, crawling the last 200 meters on your stomach through ground you crossed on your feet 11 hours ago. The trench is different, not the trench itself. The trench is exactly where it was, the same timber, the same sandbags, the same mud coming through in the same places. But the number of men in it is different and the sound of it is different, and both of these things are the same difference. Of the 720 men of the Accrington pals who went over the top at 7:30 a.m., 584 are casualties by nightfall, dead, wounded, or missing, which in this context means the same thing counted 3 different ways. You do not know this number yet. You know that Thomas Howarth's kit is still against the wall where he left it, his mess tin. The photograph he kept folded in his breast pocket he did not take with him, because you told him it would get wet and he listened to you. The photograph is still there. You sit down next to it and you do not touch it. A medical officer moves through the trench. He stops at each man, asks a question, moves on. When he reaches you, he asks if you are wounded. You tell him no. He looks at you for a moment in the way that men look at things they are filing away for later, and then he moves on. You sit in the trench that smells of chalk and mud, and the particular smell of men who have been in the same small space for a long time. You listen to the artillery starting up again, British guns this time, finding their targets in the dark. The loom had a sound, a rhythm. Once you were inside it you could not hear anything else, and after a while you stopped trying and just let it run through you, like something that had always been there. The guns run through you the same way now. You pick up Thomas's photograph, you unfold it. A woman in a light-colored dress standing in front of a house. You do not know who she is. You have seen it before, but you never asked. You fold it back along the same creases and you put it in your breast pocket. Outside the trench, no man's land is dark and quiet and full of men calling for water. Their voices carrying in the still July air the way voices carry when there is nothing left between them and the sky. You listen to them for a long time. Then the artillery starts again and you cannot hear them anymore. You are 19 years old. The whistle is in your pocket.